Hi everyone, I'm Priya from It's Okay Yaar, and welcome back to our channel. Today in our series US Visa Simplified, we have Sonal with us and we are going to answer a top question that we receive every time we do an FAQ. What is it or how to deal with a DUI on a visa? So we have Sonal with us. You've seen her on our channel many times. I will share all her details in the description box. So definitely check that out. But without any further delays, hi Sonal, how are you?
Hi Priya, I'm good. And how are you?
I'm good. Let's want to get to the topic as we had discussed earlier. It's a very serious topic, and while as much as we try to be safe around it, we have sometimes received questions around what to do if something like this happens. A lot of it is around unawareness, etc. So I think the first question is, can you help us understand what is a DUI on an H1b visa for anyone who doesn't know?
So, DUI basically means driving under influence, and in some states, it's also called DWI, which means driving while intoxicated. So, it's basically if you're driving after you have had alcohol or other substances, and if you're caught, then you're charged with a charge which is called DUI. Now, it's a serious charge for anybody, whether you are on H1B or any other visa, or for that matter, even if you are a green card holder. There are serious consequences for this charge, especially for visa holders.
Sonal, can you help us understand some of the potential implications of these charges?
So yes, there could be, inadmissibility issues and deportation issues. So inadmissibility issues are going to be relevant for the visa holders. If you're talking about H1B visas, then that's what is going to come up. Deportation is for people who are already here on an immigrant visa, like an LPR, permanent resident green card holder. So we're going to talk about inadmissibility. Inadmissibility is basically you can be stopped from entering US on a visa if you have these kind of issues. But with H1B holders, it's even more strict now. In 2015, Department of State issued a prudential visa revocation process, which means that if you get arrested for a DUI, not conviction, just an arrest, your visa can be revoked while you are in the US as well. So what does it mean is Department of State is taking these incidents of DUI, domestic violence for visa holders very seriously. And it means that if Department of State receives an information, a negative information about you from different government agencies, could be law enforcement or other US government agency about your arrest, they can automatically revoke your visa, which has already been issued to you. You can receive a notification about that revocation or you might not, but it does not impact your stay at that time because it's a visa revocation and you're already in the US, and visa you're only going to use for travel. So next time, whenever you travel, you won't be able to use that visa to come back in. That means you are now inadmissible because of that charge. You will have to go to apply for a new visa. And at that time, there are further implications that's going to come into picture because your visa is revoked for a DUI. Now, generally, you're required to go to a medical examiner and be examined by a panel physician to basically see if you have a mental disorder where you are going to be threat to yourself, others, and all that. Counselor officers are basically told to send any person who has one arrest of DUI in the last 5 years to a panel physician for a medical screening to see if they suffer from alcoholism. And if a person has two or more arrests in the last 10 years, they are also sent. Now, after that, once the report is given, and if they are convinced that, okay, it was just one arrest and you did whatever you were supposed to do, like you were given a plan to follow and you've given up alcohol, you don't drink and drive, and you basically have an history of good conduct now, and the panel physician also clears you of you don't have alcoholism, then you might get the visa again. But again, it's discretionary, so it can have very negative and grave consequence if you have been arrested for a DUI.
Would you say, what are the ways to appeal if I get a DUI? What you just explained, is it one of the ways to appeal for
So
someone who's gotten
DUI,
it?
sure. So DUI is an arrest, like the police books you, right, for the charge. Then it goes to court. Now there are different ways to deal with it. If you are charged with a DUI, it's very important that you right then and there try to mitigate it. One of the ways of doing that is to try and negotiate a lesser crime, like a reckless driving or something, where they don't talk about intoxication or that kind of stuff, but it's just like you were reckless in driving, which is a lower charge than a DUI. If that happens, that kind of protects you from DUI charge. So it's very important when you have the DUI arrest, they're going to let you go, but they do arrest you and it's going to be on your record and they do let you go. But you should hire an attorney right away so that you can work with the government and provide them, positive information about you, about your work, about your community you're involved in, so that they can take into consideration and maybe offer a lower charge, which will not be that damaging for your immigration history.
Got it. So if someone has received a DUI charge, basically they can work with a lawyer and try to appeal so that it can become a lower charge depending upon their work history, their conduct, etc. Is that
It's
accurate?
not really an appeal because you're
Okay.
dealing with the law enforcement at this time. DA's office will get involved when the charge is put, and that's where you will deal with your lawyer will basically work with the district attorney's office and try to convince them to offer you a lower charge, which you will basically plead guilty to a nolo contendere, where you will just say like, okay, I admit to this charge, and then it's not going to be DUI, but it's going to be like a lesser crime, which might be a misdemeanor, and it does not have that many grave consequences for you.
Got it. That's helpful. And while we are talking about the lawyer, can you help us understand what a lawyer cost generally for a DUI would look like?
It depends because it's a state matter. So,
Okay.
if you're in California, you're probably going to end up paying more because it's expensive. If you're in Nebraska, probably, less. But it all depends on how much time it's going to take for your case. If you're contesting it, that it's going to be a longer process to follow. If you are admitting to a lower charge, then it's going to be maybe, not that long of a process. And depending on that, it can vary. But yeah, there is no, like, I can't give you a range of like how much it's going to cost, because a lot of factors are going to play in about your past history, about where you live, and how expensive the city is and all of that.
Okay. So it could be like any number.
It
There's
could
like
be
no
thousands of
range.
dollars because it might drag. It also will include some fine, right, that you will have to pay. If there is a plea agreement, then there might be some point, and you might agree to take like some classes, some therapy classes, some community
Okay.
work. So it could entail a lot of things. But again, it depends how long it's going to take for your lawyer to, have these negotiations going on with the DA's office to get that to a level where they are satisfied that you learned your lesson and you get a better deal other than DUI.
Okay. Is there a timeline for this generally? Like when the lawyer is working through it, does it take around 1 month, 6 months? Like what kind of a time range are we talking about, or multiple years?
Not multiple years, is generally get sorted very quickly in the sense like whatever it's going to take for a normal, office. It depends, right? Some cities, counties are very aggressive on DUIs. So they want to, like, some are slow. So it depends where you are. But generally, these are the cases which they want to, especially if you're a non-immigrant visa holder, right? They want to make an example out of you. They want to tell you that you can't, flaunt these
Mm.
attitudes here. You can't, violate laws here. So they're pretty aggressive on those kind of charges because public safety is at issue here, right? If you are
Mm.
driving under influence, somebody could get killed, and it could be a whole another mess at that point, because now somebody is killed and that charge is also involved. So it could go from like 30 days to years, depending on what is involved in that situation.
Got it. The last question here, does it have any potential implications for when you're going to apply for your green card? And if you could answer this in two parts, if your lawyer was able to negotiate your DUI offense into something else, and if they were not able to do that, then what are the implications of when someone goes for their green card application?
So absolutely, a much bigger issue there, because when you're filing an I-485 or when you're applying for an immigrant visa outside, again, inadmissibility issue comes up, whether you are inadmissible because of this issue. Now, DUI, whenever they look at the crimes, it's considered a crime if you're arrested for a DUI. Even if the records were sealed, even if the records were expunged, even if you were arrested and then finally not convicted, you still have to say yes to the question on the I-485 whether you were ever arrested. So you can't lie there, it's going to be there, and you will have to explain what happened. Now, if it was like a simple DUI, right, and it was decreased to a lesser charge of reckless driving, you did what you were supposed to do, you paid the fine, you don't drink anymore, if you went for a visa outside, you went to the panel examination, you submitted that report, so you have everything in the record. You will have to give that to USCIS so that they are convinced that, and you might have to give additional information. Now, the here is that when you're filing for I-485, they look for good moral character for the last 5 years. So if this was earlier than 5 years, it could still come up. They could still, because it's a record, it's on your record. So you still have to do it. But last 5 years is more complicated. Like if you just a month ago before filing the I-485, you had a DUI, that's more damaging than it was 5 years ago, because now you have 5-year record to show you did not have another DUI. So that kind of helps your application, right? And then all those documents will have to be submitted, and the USCIS officer will make their decision. Now, the other factor that comes into play is whether this crime of DUI, say it was not reduced to a lesser charge, whether this is a crime involving moral turpitude. That's basically when they're looking at good moral character and crimes and everything together, they go by whether this crime is involving moral turpitude. What it means is that it's crime which is intentional while and against the norms of society. So again, dishonest while act you did where it's not in public safety. That's what. Now again, state law comes into picture here. In some states it might be a CIMT, in some states it might not. Generally, DUI with one, conviction is not considered CIMT. But again, you will have to show that, you will have to prove it, you will have to give all the documentation and maybe additional documentation of your good moral character from the society, from your relatives, from your friends, from your, colleagues, about your behavior and about your good moral character to overcome this charge in the past.
So what is CIMT?
Crime involving moral turpitude.
Okay, okay.
Which means a crime which is basically intentional, dishonest, while and against the norms of the society. So anything. So
Okay.
it's a very broad, definition. You go by like how the state Supreme Court has basically ruled on these kind of cases. And again, if it is just a DUI for one charge, probably it's not going to harm you that much. You might be able to overcome it. But if there were aggravating factors in it, like, somebody was killed or somebody was injured, or then it becomes even more problematic, and then CIMT definition might change because it's not just DUI at that point. So again, it's a complicated issue, and it's a lot based on the facts of the case, but generally it's not a good idea to have a DUI on your record.
Got it.
Especially,
And if you are applying for a green card, it's always going to stay on your record. And depending upon whether it was within 5 years, beyond 5 years, how it was appealed, that's going to impact your green card process as well.
the language here is like, for immigration purposes, it's on your record.
Okay.
So sometimes what happens is like DUI happened, you did, now it's like 5 years, and some states have laws where you can expunge the record after 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, or seal the record so that when you're applying for jobs, that does not show up in your background check. Those are the purpose to give, like, you did what you were supposed to do, you learned your lessons, we don't want to punish you more in the society, because if it comes up, people might not hire you. So to protect you from that, there are provisions where you could expunge the record, seal the record. But for immigration purposes, those expungement, seal does not work. You still have to, you can't say no to that question on I-485 form. It's going to be there. You will have to explain it. You will have to provide all those documents.
Again. Thank you so much, Sonal, for covering this. For anyone who's watching, do not drink and drive. All of the potential implications now. And if things are not going your way, remember it's okay. Yaar. If you haven't liked, shared, and subscribed so far, please do that. Have a wonderful day.